All righty. Well, while Bronson's working his way in, there's Rich. Hi, Rich. Sorry about the technical there.
No, that didn't work.
Stephanie, you got an idea how to help Gail with the iPad, get the video going?
No, it's not the iPad. It's my computer.
Okay.
There
There it is.
it goes.
Hey, there we go. Perfect. Okay, well, while we're waiting for Bronson to work his way in here, I'll go ahead and call their January 19th meeting for 2021 to order at 6:03. And before we call the roll, I'll ask Stephanie to read our virtual meeting ground rules and then call the roll this evening.
Okay, please make sure the name shown at the bottom of your video view is the name you would like the mayor to use. You can change this by right-clicking on the three dots in the upper corner of your video view and clicking rename. If you have an unstable internet connection, please also connect through the phone. That will allow you to continue to participate even if you lose internet connection. If you call in after you have joined on video, click the arrow between mute and video, and there is a button for switch to phone audio. Clicking this button provides a participant ID. Please call in with that ID, as then your phone is associated with your video. We will mute everyone until a public hearing, and when the chair calls the public hearing to order, if you raise your hand, you will be called upon and you will be unmuted. To virtually raise your hand, click on Participants and then click on Raise Hand. If you are participating by phone only, press *9 to raise your hand. Written comments on official public hearings will be read during the meeting. Okay. Brent Gary,
Here?
Richard Bloom,
Here.
Fred Brink,
Here.
Gail Brown,
Here.
Rich Buell,
Here.
David Fetto,
Here.
Kate Moran,
Present.
Here.
John Smart.
Here.
Okay, and let's see. I let a gentleman in by the name of Chris Beaver. You want to mute that one, Stephanie, please? And then I think Bronson's on board. Yep, there he is. There's Bronson. Okay. All right, very good. With that, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll give Stephanie a few seconds here to mute all and then unmute me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All righty. Welcome, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the sunshiny, beautiful weekend that we had this weekend. Council, the agenda is before you. I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented, please.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
So move. Second.
A motion and a second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, please. Motion carried. Thank you, council. Presentations this evening, we have Travis Martin and Spencer Montgomery, representatives from JUB. Tonight, they'll be presenting information on the bombing range and Keene Road intersection project traffic analysis. So with that, gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much for taking time this evening out of your busy schedule. And I will go ahead and turn it over to you. And I believe you have a share screen PowerPoint you're going to share with the council.
We do, yes. Thank you very much for your time and allowing us to present to you tonight. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Close that.
All right, I see it, Travis.
All right, let me turn this into presentation mode so it's a little bit bigger. All right, everyone see that? Okay, well, yeah, thanks for having us. My name's Travis Martin with JUB. This is Spencer Montgomery, also with JUB. We're happy to present the Bombing Range Road, Keene Road intersection analysis and our preliminary results from our study. As everyone knows, this particular roundabout was constructed in the early 2000s and really has served this area well over the last, starting to break down from some capacity issues on a couple of the legs. And so we're here to discuss that, discuss improvements to it and what we found. So Spencer's going to go over the forecasting that was done, some of the work that we did and some of those results.
Well, good evening. Looks like Travis and I are sitting real close together, and we are. I think I'm immune now because I had my turn with that virus. But
We have a plexiglass partition you can't see between us.
so we want to just inform you a little bit of the work that we've done so that you can understand and how we got to where we're at today and where we're at and kind of the decisions that have been made and get any feedback or answer any questions that you have. So we gathered as much information as we could get from the city that was available. And I'm going to start with this third bullet. It says Red Mountain Center development. That was a development that was discussed with the city and did some studies last year. Available as part of that was information here in this first. They had done some turning movement counts in the morning and afternoon pre-COVID. And so we felt like that was the best information to use rather than go out and collect new traffic data that would have, traffic restrictions from COVID. We also looked at the 2040 regional traffic model that's prepared by the Ben Franklin Council of Governments. So they have a base year model from 2015, and then they use existing land use and they calibrate that model, and then they look at what future land use demographics will be with respect to housing and employment, and then the model predicts what the traffic volume will be within calibrated rates from the Federal Highway Administration. And so the model shows that this intersection is going to grow about 1.5% per year average over the next 20 years or so. We also looked at the Red Mountain Center and how much traffic that was supposed to add to the roadway network and how well that was accounted for in the regional model. So the model accounted for about 20% of the development that's being proposed by Red Mountain Center. So we had to make some adjustments to account for that. We also examined the building permits that had occurred since 2015 and compared that against how much you might have anticipated based upon the regional model. And that was pretty close. It's a pretty healthy growth rate. There were 443 new households that had received building permits, which is about 25% of the 2,175 that was included in the regional model. So we looked at all those things and we prepared a forecast, and it ended up, we called that the high forecast. That was kind of the first one we did. And we said, well, what if we're a little too aggressive? And so we prepared a couple of other ones, a low and a medium forecast, just to allow some sensitivity with some of the alternatives that we were looking at as we, and I'll explain those different alternatives to you here shortly. But just for some perspective, the intersection in 2019 had just under 2,400 vehicles during the PM peak hour. And our low forecast had 3,150. Our medium forecast was 3,550, and then our high forecast was about 3,800 vehicles, which is about 160% of the existing.
Just go down that way.
So Travis is going to talk a little bit about some of the alternatives we developed.
Yeah, so as a result of the traffic projections and the modeling that was done, we developed several configurations to help reduce the congestion and the capacity issues that the existing roundabout we're seeing. Speaking of capacity, roundabouts typically serve off-peak traffic way better than signalized intersections, but of course, signalized intersections tend to handle the on-peak traffic way more effectively. Some of our intersection options we developed, we looked at the right-of-way needs of both roundabouts. In this case, due to the size that we need, had more right-of-way impacts and safety. Roundabouts are typically safer intersection control methods. When there are accidents, they're really slow speed, bender type accidents, whereas signalized intersections are typically a little higher speed, more T-bone type accidents. But we took all that into consideration as we developed our alternatives. The roundabout alternatives that were developed, we looked at 3 various sizes of roundabouts. And the size really helps with increasing the distance between the legs, which gives you a little bit more time for your entry movements, gives you more gaps in traffic. So the first option that we looked at was actually expanding the roundabout inward, removing the existing truck apron, leaving the central island, but basically building a new lane where the truck apron is today. Originally, that's how this roundabout was designed to be expanded, but given the explosive traffic that West Richland has seen over the last 20 years, that size just didn't work. We were hoping that would work because it's a really cost-effective way to increase capacity, but ultimately it didn't work. We also looked at expanding it outward, adding another lane to the outside of the existing pavement. And then we ultimately looked at the larger diameter roundabout, which greatly increases the size, which ended up needing that additional size to increase the capacity to accommodate the high forecast. Signalized intersections, we looked at left turn lanes for all approaches, a double left for the southbound movement. We looked at right turn lanes for the various legs. At one time, we looked at having right turn lanes on all the legs. And then we also looked at the bypass routes, the right turn slip lanes. We looked at a channelized bypass for the westbound right turn versus a single right turn and double right turns at the intersection. So we looked at a lot of different scenarios to try to ease capacity constraints at this particular intersection. Spencer, you want to talk about the actual traffic analysis summary?
Okay, this is a summary, and there's a lot of information in this table. We prepared a memo for your staff that has a 3-page large size table that includes tons of information with respect to all the traffic volumes, the delay, the level of service for every movement at the intersection. But we felt like this is a good summary that helps to highlight kind of a progression of how our evaluation went. So this top line right here shows the existing roundabout, the single lane roundabout from the outside of the existing, it's 140 feet in diameter. It has WBR stands for westbound right turn lane. That's what we call a slip lane sometimes. It's a free flow westbound to northbound lane. So today in the evening, and I should mention that all of this is PM peak hour analysis. What we quickly learned was that the PM was worse than the AM in every scenario. So we kind of focused in on the PM to make sure that if we could accommodate the PM traffic, then the AM would be well accommodated. So today, there's about an average of 26 seconds of delay for every vehicle at the intersection for an overall level of service is C, which is good. But the worst approach, that southbound approach, has level service E. And the reason why that approach is getting worse and worse is because at a roundabout, they have to wait for the westbound through movements. And that westbound through movement is growing as development continues out to the west. You get more westbound throughs. And so the southbound entry has to wait for the gaps.
Hey, Spencer, can I ask you one question, please? Would you please share with council what the letters stand for and what levels? So they make sure they know the highs and the lows there.
Thanks for that reminder. So this LOS stands for level of service. And it's kind of like our kids' report cards at school. A is good, F is not. Although with traffic, well, A is considered very good, and the standard is level service D. So at my house with my kids, a D grade on a report card isn't quite so good. But for traffic purposes and for a lot of other utilities that cities provide to their residents, a level service D is acceptable. And the reason why that's acceptable is if you set a standard that's too high, then you can't afford really to achieve that standard. And so that's a very typical standard nationwide, really, in urban areas, is that D is acceptable. And so what happens is within each of these letter grades, there's a range of delay for traffic. So a level service D, I don't have it right in front of me, but for unsignalized intersections, I think you can allow up to 35 seconds of delay. And the reason, and it's a longer delay for signalized intersections is acceptable because people know that eventually they're going to get a green light. So they're a little bit willing to wait a little bit longer because they know their turn is coming. Whereas if you're at a stop sign or even a roundabout, if you have to wait too long, it's like, oh man, this traffic just keeps on coming. Am I ever going to get a gap that I feel safe enough to enter? Okay. So thanks for that reminder. So we took our high forecast, that's what this second line right here is our high forecast for year 2041. And we put that into the existing roundabout, the single lane roundabout with the westbound right turn lane. And the overall intersection is going to be level service F if we don't make any improvements at all. And the worst approach obviously is going to be F, and it would be several minutes of delay for that southbound movement, like 1,000 seconds, which is forever. Okay, 15 minutes, right? So you're going to need to do something. And we always compare what the no build is just for comparative purposes. So we started looking at what would it take to fix it. And we knew that the small roundabout with these kind of traffic volumes wasn't going to work. So we looked at, our first test really was, what if we expanded the roundabout to the outside, left the truck apron there and put a new lane to the outside, which means splitter islands and things like that would all have to move out. We would still keep a westbound right turn because everybody's used to that. We can meet overall level service, but that southbound approach is not good. It would still be almost 2 minutes of delay for that southbound approach. And in order to improve that, what we would need to do is add a southbound right turn lane and an eastbound right turn lane. And also, you'll notice here, the diameter of the roundabout would get bigger. And so we tested that and found out that it would need to be 120 feet in order to put more spacing in between those approach legs so that people can recognize the gaps that are there in traffic. Same amount of gaps, but it just gives them more time to recognize them. So that's really what we feel is the roundabout answer would be to make it bigger and add these right turn lanes as well. But just to make sure, we did some other testing. We said, well, what would happen if we took out the truck apron and we tried to go low cost on this to use as much that's there as possible without having to deconstruct or remove things that are there. And in order to add the second lane, because eventually Keene Road's going to be a 4 or 5 lane road, you'd have to take out some of the splitter islands and things like that to give double entries. So if you went to a small roundabout here, and it would accommodate the low forecast. It would accommodate the low forecast and it'd get you good levels of service. If you get to the medium forecast, without extra turn lanes, you get level service F. And so you would still need the same turn lanes, the southbound and eastbound right turn lanes in order to get acceptable levels of service if you use that small roundabout. And then we also tested it similarly. Obviously, the low forecast would work with a slightly larger roundabout. But if you go to the medium forecast with the slightly larger roundabout, you would still need a right turn lane. But then, like I say, when you get to that high forecast, and we really do think that that high forecast will be here someday. It may not be exactly 20 years. And so we felt comfortable working with that high forecast, knowing that that small roundabout isn't really going to serve super well once you exceed a certain amount of volume. So those were our roundabout options, and Travis kind of explained these signal options, and they're very similar. You can see over here, all of them are going to work really well. They're all going to give a good level of service. The average delay for all of them is about the same. Let me briefly explain what the difference between them all are. So every one of these has exclusive left turn lanes for each approach. And that's a safety factor as well. Plus, it also gives you the flexibility of doing signal phasings and timing schemes to accommodate those volumes. If you add left turns in with a through lane, then you have limitations from a standpoint of having to restrict certain movements during certain phasings. And so having exclusive left turn lanes on all approaches is important. These next two alternatives just examined a couple of different alternatives with respect to how to treat that westbound right turn, because it's such a heavy movement. And for the last 20 years, they've had this channelized westbound right turn movement. We thought, well, do we want to get any complaints from anybody if we take that away? And so we looked at what that does, and the delay for that movement goes down to 0 because it would be a free flow movement. And so that takes the overall delay down a little bit. But kind of what we learned about that was, well, and another one we looked at was having double right turn lanes to shorten the queues and give them even more opportunity to turn. This first option here has right turn lanes on all approaches. And then this last one only has the westbound right turn. But what we learned was really that a single right turn lane is going to serve that movement pretty well, because they're going to get plenty of what we call green time in the signal cycle. They'll be able to go whenever the east-west throughs are going. They'll be able to go whenever that southbound left is going as well. And since that southbound left is such a heavy movement, it's going to need a fair bit of green time of its own. And so that westbound right's going to get, I forget what percentage it is, but it's, probably 70% or more of the signal cycle that it could go. Plus, it could still do right turn on red during certain times when there aren't traffic vehicles coming from the west or south. So that's kind of a summary of this slide here. Travis is going to show you and just discuss what the options are that we came up with from a physical perspective here.
Skip 2. Okay. Oops, it did skip 2. A little delay. Okay, I might zoom in here a little bit too. Well, I'll touch just on the major aspects of it at this scale. Can everyone see this clearly, or do you want me to zoom in?
Travis, I also emailed this out to council, so they've got emails of these exhibits too.
Okay,
Oh, good.
fantastic. So this is a larger diameter roundabout that's required to really operate well into the future, 20 years and beyond. Our improvements basically, almost end by East Latin Road. We got a little bit of widening and pavement transition to transition this. We've got 2 lanes, kind of like it is today. We have one northbound exiting lane from the roundabout and a right turn slip lane. The difference with this option is we have 2 lanes at East Latin. We carry those lanes through further past Equestrian and then taper those back in. And so it gives a lot more room for cars merging to get back into the single lane northbound. So we've got right turn lanes, northbound right turn lanes. We got eastbound right turns and westbound right turn slip lanes and southbound right turn slip lanes. All those are needed for capacity and to make this roundabout operate, which takes up a lot of real estate. As you can see, we've got right-of-way impacts on all 4 quadrants, pretty significant on the southwest and northwest. We've got a lot of storage room. It's a really big footprint is what's needed here.
You didn't show them that
Let's see if I can zoom in. I'm trying to zoom in here, but it's not, won't let me zoom in on. Yeah, it won't let me zoom in on presentation mode. Oh, well, now I did it. Well, anyway, it won't let me zoom in right now.
That's fine. As Roscoe said, they have,
You got to let my,
staff, council's got exhibits on that, so
Okay.
that's fine.
I'm scrolling to the next one. There's just a delay here. Okay.
Just explain that weave to them on the north leg.
For the signalized intersection.
Well, I think it shows up better for the roundabout though, actually.
Well, there's such a delay. So this island between the roundabout northbound exit and the right turn slip lane, that split, the island between the two will end about here, and then the striping starts. So there's currently today, there's very little room before that right, or that very right lane ends before East Latin. So there's people coming through the roundabout, trying to make a right on East Latin, people coming from Keene, wanting to continue north on Bombing Range. There's a big weave through there, and there's not much room. And so that was one reason why we continued this further. So if both lanes are coming in and wanting to merge into Bombing Range, we got way more distance to make that weave happen. So they're not just trying to do it in the short distance just north of East Latin. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, so there's two aspects of that weave. One of them is if they're coming eastbound and they want to go north and then turn onto Latin, they have that short distance to move over to the right. Whereas if they're making a westbound right turn and they go north, they want to weave to the left, and that's going to be the majority of those. And so we can help those guys by lengthening out north of Equestrian, but the right turn onto the Latin, if you're coming from the west, you know there's not a lot we can do about that in the roundabout scenario.
That's still a really tight weave, yeah, really tight distance. So the signalized intersection is fairly similar. In this scenario, we're able to reduce the width of the northbound and southbound legs, the north and south legs, just given the signalized intersection layout. We're able to reduce the northbound exit to one lane. This does not need a right turn slip lane because the right turns, as Spencer mentioned, gets a lot of green time with the various other signal timings. We've got a lot of storage eastbound and westbound. We tried to continue, we kept the right turn lanes. They don't really need to be this long for capacity reasons, but during certain times, during peak hours, the through traffic will back up. And so these right turn lanes are set far enough back where cars can still enter those right turn lanes even during the peak times. So that's why this right turn, the eastbound, the westbound right turn. The westbound right turn, we actually maximized even further. We're going to start that just past the Cadlick Clinic sign here to maximize how much room is available for those right turn lanes. So if that ever does back up beyond where the model shows, that there's still room for that right turn traffic to enter that lane and make the right turn. As you can see, the right-of-way impacts are far less than the roundabout option. We need a little bit of a right-of-way down in this corner for pathway relocation and storm facilities. But otherwise, they're small strip takes. Cadlick in their open field has probably the greatest, other than the northeast or northwest corner. Very small takes, very small acquisitions are going to be required for this option. And we're basically finishing all of our improvements at East Latin. So now there's just one lane. There is no weave. Right turn lanes aren't an issue. And the left turn into East Latin, that basically remains the same. So our construction limits are a lot less. We don't impact the entrance into Cadlick. Our improvements stop just short of that. So there's a lot of benefits to this layout. Is there any questions on either of those intersection configurations and layouts?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
On this map that you have up now, the northwest corner easement acquisition, is there, I guess maybe I missed it. Are there right-hand turn lanes on all directions planned, even with the signal, or not? Can you go over that again?
They're not dedicated right turn lanes in this scenario. Northbound and southbound has a combined shared and right turn lane. The right turn lanes, the numbers in the model do not show that we need dedicated right turn lanes. Do you want to expand on that? I know you know the.
So the westbound is still, you say it's a right-hand turn lane. Is it a free turn lane, or is still you go up to the stoplight and stop and turn?
You still go to the stoplight and turn. You can turn on red. There's going to be a lot of green time availability there with the other movements while they're stopped or making their green movements. There'll be a lot of green time for that westbound right turn.
The other question I had on the signalized intersection is, you said that it's good for accommodating, the heavy traffic times, and maybe not as good at the light traffic times. Isn't there a way to change how the signal operates with different traffic levels? I've been to sensors, traffic lights with sensors on them, and even if there's no traffic at all, they'll turn quickly to let you go through.
Yes, that's right. And there's a lot of technology out there that can maximize the available capacity at traffic signals. But during off-peak times, somebody still has to have a red light.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas at a roundabout, if the traffic volumes are low, you can look left and go right.
It's true.
So during those off-peak times, roundabouts work really, really well. But when they get heavy traffic, people get nervous because there's so much to watch, and so they're a little more careful with gap acceptance is what we call it, recognizing those gaps. One of the advantages that signals have is that you can change the timings for different times of the day. In the morning you may have more traffic going one direction, in the evening it's coming back the other way, and they can also sense when there's traffic there, and they can have lengthen a phase if they need to, if it can tell that the traffic is backed up a long ways on a particular approach. So signals have that kind of flexibility, whereas the capacity of a roundabout, and this particular roundabout with that southbound left turn, it uses up 3/4 of the roundabout of the capacity that's there, right? Whereas if there were a lot more right turns, then they leave a lot of the roundabout open for other traffic, right? So there were pros and cons with both types of intersection control.
And so what is the lead time on the sensors that you were using for this analysis for low traffic scenarios? In other words, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning and there's nobody there and the light's red on the direction I'm traveling, how long is there a way for the sensor? Are there sensors out there that will detect an oncoming vehicle soon enough that it essentially would not have to stop? No. Always have to stop.
So, John, Councilman Smart, let's hold the questions to the end. Let them get through the presentation and let's go through it. Some of that stuff's in the weeds. We'll get into the design. Tonight, we're just looking roundabout or signal to be able to move forward in the design.
Well, those are important issues to me to make that decision.
Travis, can you finish the presentation and then we'll do questions at the end?
You bet. So ultimately, our recommendation is to install the traffic signal. And it's basically that that layout I just showed you. Exclusive left turn lanes on all approaches with 2 for the southbound left. Exclusive right turn lane for the westbound and eastbound approaches like we just discussed. And we're starting that westbound right turn just west of that Cadlet Clinic entrance sign to maximize how much, available space there is for those right turning vehicles. The advantages of the traffic signal, significantly less right-of-way. I mean, as you can see from the exhibits, there's far less right-of-way needed for the signal than needed for the roundabout. Flexible use of signal phasing can allow serving volume differently over time, kind of what Spencer was just talking about. This gives you a little bit more flexibility later on as traffic changes, if traffic, origin destination changes, if a downtown corridor ever gets built somewhere else west of town, you have that flexibility to change that. Ability to coordinate signals in Keene Road corridor. I know Richland has been trying to get their signals coordinated and have contacted West Richland about doing that, and this allows that. This is the only roundabout on that entire Keene Road corridor, and so this allows more coordination between those signals. It eliminates that northbound weave exiting the intersection. As you know, in the roundabout today, there's that really short weave that we discussed. And just longer range capacity. This thing will be able to serve well beyond the 20-year forecast, given changes to, signal timing and even the ability to add maybe additional right lanes in the future if traffic really warrants that. The disadvantages to the signal, like Spencer just mentioned, off-peak has higher delays in roundabout because no matter what, someone is coming to a stop at least for a small portion of time. There's more conflict points and accidents, and accident severity can be increased with a signalized intersection. And just increased maintenance costs. You've got signal maintenance you got to do on a regular basis and getting your crews out there to do that maintenance. So there are some disadvantages. That's the end of our presentation, Roscoe. We breezed through the end, so if we want to discuss.
Let's go ahead. This is Brent. Let's go ahead and I see Mayor Pro Tem Brink had his hand up, as well as Councilman Fetto and Councilmember Moran. And if anybody wanted to, and Councilman Boone and everybody, if you wanted to go back to, any of the maps, I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Brink, and if you'd like to go back to a map, please designate which one you'd like to see if you had questions of that particular item when I call on you. So we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Brink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Martin, Mr. Montgomery, I appreciate the presentation. I don't need any maps. I do have hard copies in front of me, but I obviously what stands out to me initially is the large footprint, the much larger footprint of the roundabout layout versus the signalized intersection. I will share this with you. I live off of East Latin Road, and I do typically travel maybe once, possibly twice a day, eastbound on Keene Road, where I have to go through the roundabout and then go north and jockey over to the right-hand lane to East Latin. As you undoubtedly know, there are a couple hundred houses between the lakes and the mountains area and other areas back in that area, in that region. It would be impossible with the roundabout motion or with the roundabout design to go right on East Latin, and the next opportunity to go right is at North Lake. That design, I think, would cause a significant inconvenience for a fair number of people. I see the signalized intersection, though, as having a much smaller footprint. And that's the one that I lean toward based on your recommendation as well. Can you answer this? Is there any estimate for the comparative costs between the two designs? Or is that not appropriate to ask at this time?
we're still developing those and based on the direction council, gives us, we will be refining those and preparing those, but we don't have those ready yet.
Okay, all
But
right,
rule of thumb, Councilman Brink, is typically roundabouts are twice as expensive to build than signals.
all right. I'd go with the signalized intersection is my preference.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Pro Tem Brink. Appreciate it. Councilmember Moran? Stephanie, you want to? Nope, you got it. Perfect. Okay.
I got it.
Perfect.
Yes, so I'm wondering, when we're looking at the roundabout, I wasn't quite sure that I caught. So how much of this right of way are we needing? And is it even possible to get some of this right of way? Because it looks like one of them actually cuts into either part of the house or a garage there on the southwest corner.
Yeah, you may be buying a house.
Okay, so would this be the only way rather than going more into and purchasing from the Cadillac lot?
Roscoe, you might add to that.
I mean, you can move it a little bit, but the problem is you're trying to stay within the right of way.
Right,
I mean, you shift it north to try to get away from that house. I'd say you'd lose the access to people to be able to get into East Latin. So we played with where the center of the double lane roundabout is, and to try to get away from taking that house in the southwest, and it just doesn't fit very well. It just didn't, it caused other issues, I guess is the easiest way to say.
okay. So I know that WashDOT has really been pushing for roundabouts because it does improve the level of service, and they've been doing that for years. Is our main focus just because of the right of way that we would have to get and the cost?
No, it's a combination of all of them and having flexibility. You don't have any flexibility or control with a roundabout. So the problem currently is you've got a whole bunch of people coming from Richland down Keene Road heading westbound that provides no brakes for the southbound traffic coming to Bond Range, and it backs up. So adding 2 lanes, I'm not sure, I'm convinced it's going to create those necessary gaps. So, it's a combination of everything, Kate, from the right-of-way impacts to the cost, to ongoing maintenance costs, to be able to coordinate the whole corridor with Richland with a signal. So as traffic patterns change with a signal, I think Councilman Smart kind of hit on it. I've got all the flexibility in the world to run multiple programs, different times of day, and connect that with Richland on the corridor. I don't with a roundabout. But in this case, the real telltale tie is I have an issue taking somebody's house for the potential.
Right.
If you guys were adamant with roundabouts, then I would go back and try to refine this to try to get away from that take. Never want to take somebody's house. DOT is pushing roundabouts because the maintenance costs, but there's substantially more up front. But they got their purpose. I'm not 100% sold. You can look at DOTs at the Richland Y. Look at that double lane roundabout. For those that have lived here, how many times have they modified it? They keep messing with it and tweaking it as the traffic patterns change. So that's kind of why staff's leaning and the consultant was leaning toward the signal. Gives us more flexibility, less impact to the neighbors that are there. And I think it's less overall cost to construct. So, and gives us the flexibility, Kate. So hopefully that answered your question.
Well, sorry, Roscoe. I'm a roundabout guy. I mean, I've been involved in 25 different roundabout projects since I've been at JUB. I love them. I design them everywhere. They work great when your traffic is evenly split between all the legs, so they function phenomenally. But when you start getting this heavy directional traffic is when they fall apart. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work in this location.
I'm just, when you said that the maintenance cost would be more for a roundabout, I thought it was actually less for the roundabout.
No, the capital cost to construct are significantly more. The maintenance costs are less less for a
Right.
roundabout.
Right, the maintenance is less.
But again, we're talking power for LED lights at a signal on a cabinet.
Right, right. But we're also talking about safety because the accident rates do go up. I mean, we saw at the four-way at Kennedy and Keene, the accidents that are there.
Again, you got to look at, are they correctable?
Mhm.
And the majority at Keene and Kennedy are not correctable accidents. I can't stop somebody from pulling out in front of them. Well, I did. We made them not be able to take a left on a flashing yellow. They had to wait until they get a green. But that's not a correctable accident, or if they're impaired, or speeding or following too close. So I can't fix that. Whether you put a signal or roundabout isn't going to correct that. You can look at the accident history here. There's been a ton of accidents in that roundabout, and the severe ones have all been impaired drivers. Don't think you're not going to have accidents. You're going to have accidents either way. The trend is, though, at a roundabout, they're less severe.
Right.
So,
And with this drawing right here, it has us maintaining the circle on the inside. Did we not get a picture of what it would be like if we were to put the second lane on the inside? Because that was also not a bad option, if I remember correctly from the table.
no, it did not function. It did not meet. So they gave you a low, medium, and high. The
Mhm.
high is what all the models and all the information, the data we have, that's
Mhm.
what to expect. What the high is, I'd even say there probably should have been a higher model, because we've got 1,000 acres of the ranch north of Rupert that's in the planning stages. That's not factored into this. So those low and medium are not reasonable options to consider. You need to look at so you're comparing apples to apples, is looking at the high traffic predictions. And when you look at them, both the double lane roundabout and the traffic signal are almost identical as far as level of service. The signal's level service D, but I think it's just barely D. It's right on the edge of being a C. And again, that's in 2041, not at opening. And again, gives you the flexibility that the roundabout does not. You want flexibility with the roundabout, you're reconstructing it, just like DOT did at the Richland Y numerous times.
Anything else, Kate?
Nope.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Councilman Fetto?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm in agreement. I think the signals of these two options, the signal is definitely the better one. I don't want to have to displace somebody. It doesn't look like you can make this thing work and not run into the house there on the corner there. On the signal, so the problem at the Kennedy and Keene, I know there was some accidents left, right? But there was a lot of accidents, Roscoe, of people making right turns into with traffic and getting hit from behind. Was that also on the report you gave out?
Yeah. So people were pulling out in front of people.
Right,
Yep,
coming.
yep.
So coming down, so going north on Bombing Range, what's the field of view look like making that right-hand turn? It looks like the turn is inside of the corner of the other traffic. I mean, it's hard to see on this, but are we gonna have an issue with sight? People making a right-hand turn too quick and not seeing people coming down? Keene?
I'm not following the turning movement.
So if
David.
you're making a right-hand turn, so going north on Bombing Range into the intersection, making a right-hand turn on Keene, what's the sight gonna be like looking back left on Keene, looking west? So eastbound traffic on Keene, northbound on Bombing Range, make a right-hand turn on Keene headed towards Richland.
Yeah, okay.
That corner just looks like it sits lower. And maybe, I
Well,
don't know if there's any
There'll be
obstruction.
sight distance, sufficient sight distance for the posted speed limit. But that
Okay.
movement you just called out, I don't even think we'll have 3 cars making that turning movement. Anybody that's going that direction will turn at Kennedy to head that direction. We don't see, that's why it didn't have its own right turn lane. There's
Okay.
just there's not cars making that turning movement. But for whatever the posted speed limit, there'll be sufficient sight distance.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, it's when there's no traffic there, having to stop and wait to the light cycles is an inconvenience, but I think cost wise, this makes sense. Not having to buy someone's house and then displace them. And I'm assuming costs be lower as well because we're not taking as much land away for right away. So I think the signal in this case is the best option.
Thank you, Councilman Fetto. Councilman Bloom, sir.
Yes, I guess my question is more bottom line. What would be the worst case cycle time that you would see on this intersection with the lights?
Well, what do you mean by worst case cycle time?
Well, I mean, you said at the intersection of, is it Quinault and Columbia Center Boulevard, that's an eternity light, for the entire cycle to repeat, assuming the intersection doesn't clear.
The cycle length, how long does it take for it to go all the way around?
Yeah.
I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but those can vary throughout the day.
Well, I mean, but I'm looking at, you've got peak times and, you're assuming peak traffic, looking at the flow, you're assuming peak traffic is either through the intersection or left turning off of Bombing Range going towards Richland.
Right. Well, there's a balancing act, and that specific timing hasn't been set up yet. I mean, we did run some with signal optimization to maximize the flow of the intersection. But because of that southbound left turn, the signal cycle is going to have to go around fairly quickly. I mean, there's a balancing act with that. I mean, if the longer your signal cycle, the more overall capacity you have at an intersection over the course of an hour. But, and so there is a little bit longer wait overall. But the shorter the cycle, the quicker people get their turn, right? But the shorter the cycles, the more all red time you have. For safety purposes, they have a second of all red at every change of the phasing. And
right.
So all red you have, then
Hey, Travis or Spencer, with these level of service that you show, it has a delay, and that delay is an average delay.
it's
That was
an
on that
average
table?
delay that we've got on the sheet that was given to you there.
Yeah, so Richard, they haven't done the design with it. They're looking at we designed for peak traffic flow, level of service with that. And you can see the average delay, was it 20 some odd seconds on that? Put the table up.
We weren't given the table.
No, he's got it in his presentation.
Yeah,
There it is. So when you look at the overall delay, you can see that around about slightly in the 18, 19 seconds, and the ones down below were in the close to the mid 25s to 30, close to 30. So that gives you the average, and that's at the PM peak. So I guess, Spencer, without having this designed or gone through the programming and put those programs to know what a typical delay for the time of day, would you assume that your delays off peak would be less than your overall delay? Or is that already factored in that number?
I would expect off-peak delays to be considerably less.
Okay.
Was a signaled roundabout? I mean, that was the semi-solution at the 240 interchange that they put in at
Columbia Park Trail.
yeah.
You're asking if they considered a signal there?
If we consider signal.
They've signaled. They have a signal coming off of Columbia Park Trail into that roundabout now.
It's a delay signal like you have on freeway entrances on the interstate.
Right. Yeah, they call that ramp metering.
Yes.
And,
Right.
or metering, and what that does is it creates some gaps for the other legs of the intersection. If you have one leg that kind of dominates a roundabout, that's one of the fixes, so to speak, that kind of introduces gaps.
That was looked at, Richard, when we were doing selection for which engineering firm we were going to select. And so the utility committee saw a couple different options. And one of them was with metering on the westbound leg to create the gaps for the southbound, but it was a Band-Aid that didn't last very long. So if we didn't have money to do, we don't have construction money for either of these, but putting that meter to slow the westbound or delay it to create gaps was something they talked about to Band-Aid until you can do a long-term fix, but it caused issues with the shoe fly lane there.
It did. And I believe that was only 5 to 7 years we got out of that map.
It was less than that, and I think you lost the shoe fly lane for going through. So it caused other issues, Richard, but that was something that was looked at, but not deemed a long-term solution.
I just, I mean, having grown up in a signaled, dealing with a signaled roundabout, better known as Lee Circle in New Orleans, I don't know what it's called now. You know, it is conceivable, it's slower, but it does, how do I put it? It does keep the traffic moving rather than just sitting them at a light generally.
Well, in this case, you'd stop the westbound traffic to create gaps. And so westbound towards Richmond would back up. But the issue is that free right turn would have to come out of there. There's no way to distinguish someone coming up there. Is that red light for me to go into the roundabout or for me to still continue in the shoe fly lane? There's no room there. That's the difference between this and the Richland Y where they're metered. But again, they did look at it during the selection and presented to the utility committee. And it was a Band-Aid. It didn't last. So.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's see here. Councilman Buell, your thought on this? I'm kind of looking for a consensus of which direction council wants to go here. I hear from Mr. Fetto and Mr. Brink that that's the direction. Well, I didn't hear anything from Kate as far as for sure, and I'm not sure, John, you can chime in too and let me know if you like a light or a roundabout. And then Gail's also got her hand up too. So while you're thinking about that, I'll go to Gail.
Can you hear me? I don't have any problem with the signal part at all. I guess I didn't hear the timeline, what we were looking at.
So Gail, we got a federal grant to do this preliminary analysis and design, and we've got a little bit of money towards right away, but the project is not fully funded to go to construction. The goal is to select, typically this would go to the utility committee, but this is a big enough intersection, affects pretty much everybody in town goes through this. That's why you're seeing this full presentation in council, and I apologize for this, but I thought it was important enough that everybody at council bought in before we moved into the design.
Ideally, if we have the money for the design, ideally, when would we want to do construction based on our growth?
As soon as I can get money to construct it. So just like we were able to get money for 38th and to finish bombing range to the south, my goal is to have this ready to go, shovel ready. So the next call for federal projects, I can go after construction funding. We can look at TIB. So that's the goal, but there is not construction funding secured at this time.
But this would be our second project we would want to be doing.
Our second project?
Well, that we got the light and then we want bombing range. So this would be kind of like our third project that we'd be looking at, big project.
Well, the light at 38th and Van Giesen is fully funded, it's secured, and so is the Van Giesen project. So I'd say this is our number one. I don't count the projects already got secured funding.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And then move up to Councilman Smart. See.
Yeah, I was just curious if there were any way to get these level of service numbers higher with a signal. I note that the 120-foot roundabout, it's got a B and a C, and the best we can do with the signal looks like a C and a D.
Keep in mind too, this is at the build out to, this goes to 41. So you've got, I think your level of services are better in the earlier years as they peak towards 41. Is that correct, Travis?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
In John, the signal on the worst approach is just barely a D.
Okay.
It's a C minus.
Yeah.
D plus.
Yeah, 2041.
Well, plus I'm aware that, you know, a lot of this has to do with how they're programmed for each part of the day that they're operating. So it might be an unfair comparison, but yeah, I'm generally in favor of the signal. So I'll just leave my comment at that. It looks good to me.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Ms. Moran?
Yes. So I do want to just make sure I understand. So we've already looked at the possibilities of if we were looking at going more towards the northeast with this. I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying with that.
Shifting it to the north would eliminate traffic to be able to turn into East Latin. Councilmember Brink was spot on. There's already a conflict at that. Shifting it up that north would eliminate probably access to East Latin in that area. That would cause some issues.
Okay.
I don't like the idea of going to a signal. I would prefer to stay with the roundabout if at all possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like the
I
idea of
understand.
taking somebody's house, but I feel like there must be some way somehow to do it without going that route.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Buell?
I'm having awful reception. Don't know if you can hear me. I don't have questions. Suggest with the traffic signal option. Thank you.
Thank you. Heard you perfectly loud and clear, sir. Thank you. So Roscoe and JUB, I think you got a consensus of the direction that we need to go with this. So with that, anything else, Roscoe?
Just next steps. So thanks, Travis Spencer, for the presentation. So council next steps is I'll be working with JUB now that we know what we're going to be designing for, negotiating the next phase in their contract to actually put the design together and look at the right of way. And so you'll see a contract amendment for them at a future council meeting so they can continue this work going forward. Again, the goal is to get it designed, right of way acquired, all the environmental permitting complete. So it is truly a shovel-ready project that I can go to after federal or TIB money for construction. So appreciate your time, and it kind of got a little lengthy, but again, I thought it was important that we got the full discussion with council and not just the utility committee.
Travis, thank you very much. And Spencer, appreciate it always. You guys have a great evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Good
Okay,
evening.
council, the consent agenda is now before you, which includes approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 5th, 2021. Approve the 2021-2022 Visit Tri-Cities Agreement. Approve the contract with Express Employment Professionals for 2021. And confirm the mayor's reappointments to the Park Board. And an ordinance 0421 periodic shoreline management plan update. And resolution 0321 to authorize the mayor to execute an interlocal agreement regarding the Quad City water right mitigation model and operating procedures with cities of Richland, Kennewick, and Pasco, and repealing the resolution 7620. If there's anyone from the audience who would like to speak to the consent agenda this evening, please raise your virtual hand, or if you're by phone, *9 to be recognized. I see no one. Stephanie, do you see anyone?
I do not.
Okay, with that, then council, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda this evening, please?
I move to pass the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Thank you, council. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, please. Motion carried. Thank you, council. Moving on to 7, which is ordinances, resolutions, motions, and public hearings. This evening, ordinance 0521 in regards to a wheeled all-terrain vehicle, chapter 1017, and changing the ATV ORV, chapter 1016. Do I have a motion, please?
I move to pass the, got it already, 521 and 621 wheeled all-terrain vehicle, chapter 1017.
I second.
Chief Majetic, do you have a staff report for us this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do. Ladies and gentlemen, council and the audience. If council recalls, we had a presentation earlier in the year where we discussed the possibility for a local ordinance to allow wheeled all-terrain vehicles to be operated on city streets within the city of West Richland, which is authorized under state RCW 46.09. This was the subject was first broached after council received numerous inquiries from citizens about the possibility of adopting such an ordinance and requested further research. I provided a presentation to council on December 15th over and reviewed RCW 4609 as well as what a local ordinance would look like. And also, I provided the council an example of a Kennewick ordinance that has already been adopted for a period of a year prior to the presentation, and reports from the city of Kennewick and the Kennewick Police Department of little or no issues since adopting the wheeled all-terrain vehicle ordinance. Once this presentation was provided to council, I conducted, and given the basic consensus that is something to explore further, I looked at our existing municipal codes, chapters 1016, which already govern all-terrain vehicles and off-road motorcycles. My plan initially was to propose a update of 1016 to be all inclusive of all-terrain vehicles and wheeled all-terrain vehicles as well as motorcycles, but then felt that by including all that detail and subject matter into one chapter would be very confusing for people to delineate the difference between a WATV versus an ATV and off-road motorcycle. Thus, the proposal that I'm presenting to council tonight is to create a new chapter, 1017, which governs specifically wheeled all-terrain vehicles and the requirements and laws that would govern them, and simply updating 1016. So we would clear up the confusion between the two types of vehicles and clearly delineate the definition of a wheeled all-terrain vehicle versus an all-terrain vehicle and off-road motorcycle. So with that, ladies and gentlemen of the council and the audience, staff and myself would recommend the adoption of a new municipal code chapter 1017, authorizing the use of a wheeled all-terrain vehicle on local city roadways, and update 1016 of the municipal code to clearly define the difference between a wheeled all-terrain vehicle and an all-terrain vehicle and off-road motorcycles. And also, ladies and gentlemen of council, this proposal would have no fiscal impact on the current operating budget of the city. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And before we move on to council questions or discussions amongst yourself, is there anyone from the audience who would like to address this item on the agenda this evening? If you do, please raise your hand, and we'll ask Stephanie to recognize you. I see no one from the audience. Oh, I do, excuse me. Let's see, Scott Myers. Stephanie, you want to unmute Scott Meyer, and please state your name and place of residence for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Scott Meyer, and I live within the city limits of West Richland. I live right off a bombing range on Kiger Road. And I have been a long time wheeled ATV owner and user, also a retired paramedic, and have spent my entire life keeping my driver's record absolutely spotless. The people that I know in this community are very conscientious. We understand the rules, we abide by the rules. We understand that the state WAC has very specific guidelines that we must operate within. And I think the council can feel confident that the WATV users within the city limits of West Richland will operate them safely and effectively.
Thank you, sir. And I see Megan Tripp. Please state your name and residence for the record. And Stephanie has you unmuted.
Hi, this is Megan Tripp. I am in West Richland on Juneberry in Hyde Park. I first off wanted to thank you for even considering this, but I just had a question, just being naive a little on, so if it were to pass tonight, what does that mean for timelines? Do we need to wait until it's actually written in?
We'll have a discussion a little bit later in regards to that. When I asked the chief after council's questions, I could have him follow up with that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. And I see no one else. Do you, Stephanie?
Brad, can I redo my motion because I don't think I read that right. I didn't read the update. So if I could just restate that motion.
Okay. Now we have, since we have no, since we have no more comments from the public, go ahead, Gail, and revise your motion, please.
I'll move to approve ordinance 521 and ordinance 621, updating chapter 10.16, all-terrain vehicles and off-road motorcycles, and adding new chapter 1017, all-terrain vehicles to the West Richland Municipal Code.
I have a second for the amended motion, please.
I'll second it again.
Okay. Now I have motion second. We've heard from our citizens here this evening, and I see that Councilman Fetto, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I was going through this thing. Is there a one, and I know it says something about not allowing children. Is there an age limit or requirement? And then also, do you need to be a licensed driver to be able to operate one of these on the roads?
Correct. The ordinance governing children, it has to be 5 years or older. Children that are 16 or under are still have to abide by the restraint laws with RCW, such as booster seats and things of that nature. And you have to be at least 18 and a licensed driver in order to operate on the city streets. The reason for the 18 years of age is that the RCW that governs these actually has a training course that they have in the hopper that they may implement with the requirements. They haven't done so yet, but it was indicative of having somebody with a little bit of experience behind the wheel that would operate these vehicles, because they do have different handling characteristics. So we'd want a more experienced driver.
Okay, perfect. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Blue?
Yes, my question's more why we varied from the state's definition of a wheeled all-terrain vehicle. There seems to be a couple of different things that sort of goes against the state regs. One is the maximum weight, we say 3,000 pounds, and the state says 2,000 pounds. And wheelbase, we say 120 inches, and the state says 110. Is there a reason?
Sure there is. So we want to make sure we have a clear delineation of what a WATV is. The state gets a little bit too close to other vehicles, which if modified to a slight degree could also be considered WATV by definition. Let's say, for example, Mr. Bloom, a golf cart. The standard golf cart would not meet these definitions, could not be operated on the streets. So the larger the wheelbase and sizing means that it actually gets further away from the traditional all-terrain vehicles or alternate transportation vehicles. So unlike the state law, we, and I talked to Kennewick about this specific point, we wanted to make sure that some alterations to a vehicle that we had no intent of allowing on the roadway would not occur.
Well, I mean, making it the ability for it to be heavier doesn't, I mean, we're still at, it has to weigh at least 900 pounds. So making it heavier doesn't restrict anything. It actually makes it broader, and making the wheelbase longer also broadens it. I mean, we have the same short wheelbase.
Right. And you also have to remember too, the WATVs, I'm not an expert on the WATV, let's get that straight, but WATVs have changed some since RCWs were published as well. And it does accommodate larger vehicles because they have gotten larger since the Razors and all those other models first came on the market.
But are they licensable by the state,
Yes,
even though they violate the state's definition?
they don't violate the state definition. If you go further in the RCW, it does allow you some modifications.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Councilman. Anything else?
Well, the only other one was the question of whether we don't include the diameter of 30 inches or less for the tires in our definition. That's in the state definition. I don't know if that's. I'm just.
Yeah, I don't know what else to tell you, Mr. Bloom.
So these are the words that came out of the Kennewick reg.
No. And again, there's a lot of research that went into this. Again, there's some differences in WATVs. The state definitions were initially adopted when they allowed the WATVs first to operate on state roadways, which was quite a while ago. Since that time, there have been additional advancements in WATV technology, including equipment modifications and engine modifications, which did expand the scope of them. If you research the RCWs that govern WATVs, it does allow local ordinances to make adjustments to what vehicles are allowed on those streets. And that's including the adjustments to the sizing and weights and measurements, including the tires. And the tire pressure, a lot of people look at it weird as far as why do we have tire pressuring even mentioned into this? Again, it's more about really narrowing it down to specific type vehicles that we're looking for to operate on our city streets.
Right. Well, the 20 PSI is consistent with the state requirement. I was just looking at how we exceeded the state requirements. But we do enact in the regulation all the pertinent aspects of the state requirements as far as licensing, registration, etc. So then we must somehow or another, we'd be the vehicle that exceeds their definition must somehow have a variance within the reg somewhere.
But if you, I guess another way to explain it, it's like you can make, you know how the general rule of thumb is where you can make some laws more strict, but you can't make, or you can make them more strict, but not less than the higher form of government, similar to what states, they can only impose laws under certain guidelines and not to exceed the federal standards. I think that's what you're seeing here too. So we can go this direction, but we couldn't go the opposite direction because the state is the one that's a little bit higher authority than the local jurisdiction, just like the federal jurisdiction is higher than the state.
Right, and in both cases I mentioned, we're less restrictive than the state.
No, you're talking bigger. You're talking larger. It's not restrictive. Two different things.
No, we allow it bigger.
We're allowing bigger.
Right, you're allowing bigger, not more restrictive. Two different things. Size and restriction.
Well, less restrictive. Yes, we're less restrictive.
Okay, we're clear now on bigger's not better and more's not less.
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, think about it for a little bit while I move on to Mayor Pro Tem Brink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question. I just would like to make a comment here. This issue or this advocation for the allowing the operation of wheeled all-terrain vehicles was brought up by our citizens earlier last year. I think the citizen advocacy and involvement to bring this issue to the table was very important, and I thank our citizens for their involvement. Chief Majewski, I also thank you for thoroughly researching this topic and really presenting a balanced approach to the issues concerned. So I'm all in favor of it, and I just wanted to pass on those comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brink, much appreciated. So I see nobody else's hand up. So with that, may I have all in favor say aye, please?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay?
I'll say nay.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you, council. Appreciate it. And with that, we will go move on to unfinished business, which we have none.
Mr. Mayor,
And yes, ma'am.
can I
Oh,
address?
yeah, one
the-
question I forgot to ask you. Yeah, Legal asked a question. When's this become law and in effect?
So all of our ordinance go into effect 5 days after publication. So what will happen is tomorrow I will send notice to the Tri-City Herald. And usually publication after the council meeting occurs on the Friday after, making it go into effect the following Wednesday. But just to be safe, because we are at the whim of when the Herald can publish our notices, I would say definitely by February 1st.
And that'd be something that I'd ask that once it's all published and everything is the date is live. Would you please post that on the website? I might ask everybody to take a look at it there, just to confirm that you're good to roll the four-wheeler. Or not the four-wheeler, excuse me, the side-by-side or ATV. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And again, no unfinished business or new business this evening. So this is the opportunity for citizen public comment. If you would like to address council for any items that are not on the agenda this evening, if you would go ahead and please raise your virtual hand. I'll ask Stephanie to recognize you and unmute you. You could address council at that time. I see no one. Stephanie, anybody's hand up out there?
I don't see anyone.
Okay, thank you. All righty, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to staff and council announcements and reports and comments. As staff, anybody's got some information to share with council this evening? Okay. I see Mr. Eric.
I want to let council know that we've received 3 applications for comp plan amendments already. The application is open at this time, so we still may receive, I'm anticipating receiving at least 1 more application before the end of this month. But we are receiving applications to amend the comp plan, mostly to rezone some properties. So I will be bringing all of that information to you the first of the next month.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Any other staff comments, reports? Okay, seeing none, council.
We have the chief.
Oh, the chief, I forgot his hand last time too. Gee whiz.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, you had your 15 minutes already, chief.
Oh, no, I had 4 minutes. Mr. Bloom had 15, so that doesn't count.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. Chief Majetic, what could you share with us?
Just real quickly, Mr. Mayor, but it's an important subject. Just over 2 weeks ago, myself and Captain Grego, as soon as they became available, went down and got our COVID vaccines offered by Cadlick. They were the Pfizer dosages that we had received. And to let you know, the first dose, I had absolutely no side effects. Captain Grego and some other officers subsequently said that they had a little bit of a rundown feeling the next day, like operating at 80 or 90%, but beyond that, no side effects. Both Captain Grego and I are going to get our second doses next week. And I'll be sure to provide a report on that as well, just to assuage any concerns or fears or anybody had any information on it. I'm being your guinea pig. And so far, no problems. And the only other thing on top of that, Mr. Mayor, would be the new police facility. I sent out some information on some possible scenarios, how we can do a groundbreaking ceremony. We'll know for sure the exact date of that. It'll be the first week of February. I'll send out a press release next week announcing that. Unfortunately, it will be a virtual event and we have to have limited attendance under this the current phase 1 status that we find ourselves in. But we'll definitely make up for it at the grand opening ceremony. And I even warned Roscoe that even though the speeches will be very short for the groundbreaking, being a virtual event, I will more than make up for it at the ribbon cutting event. And he said, pack a lunch. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Councilman Fetto this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just really quick, just want to say thank you to Stephanie, she showed me, my routine had been when I get the agenda, the packet virtually was to break it all out into separate tabs. So I would print each section out and then have a folder and have each of the sections have all 17 tabs open and just be clicking through them all. But then she showed me that when she sends this out, she tabs this thing in Acrobat. So all you do is click on 6C and 6C pops up. So Stephanie, thank you for giving me back an hour of my day back every meeting.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Bloom.
Well, I guess I'm now qualified to go get my COVID shot. One of the benefits of old age. I've been getting some feedback from one of our local constituents relative to what they consider excessive building permit review charges for accessory buildings. To some extent, there may be some excess. Some things are simpler to review than others, but we have a very flat rate system of making that call. So it's something we might want to look at because we don't want to discourage people from getting permits from basically doing some activities that are a little high. What I'm told is the permit review process varies a little bit from city to city on accessory buildings. Some don't require a permit review fee. And in our discussions way back when we looked at those fees, it's very rational to have that permit review fee up front because we were getting a lot of applications that never went through. So I fully support the permit review fee. The question comes down to is, does it really reflect for accessory buildings our actual costs? Because it does vary from municipality to municipality. I mean, putting up a shed, I can understand the inspection fees associated with the permit. The review fee may be a little excessive at 60%.
Okay, I'll ask you to reach out to Eric and chat about that. And then Eric could also send out a response to all or information for council not to respond to all if there's any follow-up he feels justified in regards to that, if you would, please. Okay, thank you. And then Councilmember Moran.
Yes. First, we did have a Ben Franklin Council of Governments meeting on the 15th. We went over, continue to go over the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS, for 2021. They're going to be looking at objectives and adding measurables. And John Kennedy, who's with BFCOG, is going to be meeting with the different municipalities, including West Richland, fairly soon if he hasn't already. We got a timeline of CEDS going all the way through to the confirmation of project information, which it looks like they have is August of this year. And some EDA submissions, final reviews, which I can give that information to anybody if they'd like that. And then when we went into the BFCOG meeting, we went through and gave an award to Bob Koch, I think is how his last name is pronounced. He's retiring.
Cook.
Cook, yes, thank you. It was one of 3 different ways of pronouncing it. And we went over the TIP status for 21 through 22, the Regional Vision 2045 survey. We got an update on that. They updated the BFCOG website, and there is a new bicycle map that they're working on. It looks like they're mostly complete. They were able to add in a lot of the West Richland bike lanes that were missing. So thank you for whomever helped them with that. And other than that, we did approve some tip amendments and a tip document amendment table. There was an e-board position that needed an appointment because of Bob leaving, so that was filled by Chuck Torelli as appointment. And the next meeting is February 19th. Other than that, I did notice that we got an email from one of our citizens regarding the recycling containers that we have, similar to something that myself and council members Brown and council member Buell had discussed when it comes to there being a lot of trash and other waste around the containers, which is a concern. And I'm hoping that the small group that we're forming with the three of us can find a way to get solutions to that and possibly have some input from the good folks that live within West Richland with us to help us figure out what maybe they might want to see happen. So I'm interested in finding a way so that we can not have it look as bad as it does.
Okay. Very good. And yeah, so we've got that group that's gonna assemble. Also, Roscoe has made contact with Ed's Disposal, had the conversation with management there. They'll be addressing that issue as well.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Brink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question and a comment. Question is directed to Chief Majetic. Chief, you mentioned you and Captain Grego got your COVID shots. What about the sergeants and the patrol officers? Have they received them as well? I'm just curious what the status is for the rest of our police department.
All of the officers were offered the opportunity to take the vaccine. It was not mandated.
Okay, so those that chose to take it have received it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief. And then lastly, I do want to thank our city clerk, Stephanie. You know, there it is. I'm able to use it and it's working great. And thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Brown.
Yes, I along with the roads, Walla Walla Good Roads has gotten together. We're getting together with both COGS, Walla Walla, and the Tri-Cities to come up with our new list. And I didn't see Buell's hand up. I don't know if he was going to update that the school is actually going back next week. I know my grandson is going Wednesday. I was kind of thrilled that they were going, but and they do look like it's really safe as far as their sanitation, but the way they have these poor kids just lined up and masked and 6 foot apart, and it's fine. I mean, it just does not sound pleasant at all. But I guess we'll see how that works. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Smart.
Yeah, just to follow on with that topic of wearing masks, especially for children, I just want to encourage people to wash their masks and take efforts to sterilize them or replace them. So that requires heat, long durations out in the sun. I've heard of people freezing their masks overnight to kill the microbes and bugs that live on it. The real thing that one of the things I've read about is the danger of incurring biological or fungal infections of the lung. People that are wearing these masks all day long and then wearing them day after day, there's stuff growing on the masks, which probably will be as bad or worse than COVID. So please wash your masks, change them out, maybe buy a few extras. And then I would like to also just clarify my comments on the why I don't think there's an emergency. I'm not saying there's not COVID, and I'm not saying you shouldn't stay healthy. I'm not even saying you shouldn't take the vaccine. What I'm saying is that the emergency powers that have been enacted are just that, they're emergency powers. I did a little bit of research and found that, in Washington State, we have the 8th highest life expectancy of all the states in the United States. So we deserve some kudos there. It was kind of surprising to see which states are longer lived than us. But of our population, we have 7,615,000 people. We have about 95,000 people each year dying in Washington State for all sorts of causes. We've had about 3,903 deaths from COVID. That's about 0.005%. So of all the people that die, about 4.1% of those deaths have been recorded as COVID deaths this year. The data I was able to find for 2009-2011, which is not a particularly bad year for the flu, the people that died from the flu in that time span averaged at 3.9% of all the deaths were caused by the flu. So this is why I don't believe there's an emergency, because an additional 0.2% of deaths caused by a flu does not, in my book, cause an emergency. So I just wanted to clarify that in case somebody thought I was speaking without some information behind it. I've looked up the numbers, and the numbers just don't play out for a statewide emergency. So I'm saying that because I think that the sooner our population comes to that realization, the sooner we may be able to pressure our state government to allow us to take care of ourselves, stay healthy, and get back to business. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, I see no other council members. Real quick here, I'll touch base. This is kind of dated news from our regional Zoom meeting that we had with our new region, which is, I think it was it Kittitas, Yakima, Benton, Franklin, Walla Walla, and one more. They reported that there was 545,000 vaccines in the state and only 180 of them in the arms. So that was only about a third of them. So that discussion was opened up as what do we need to do to expedite this distribution of this vaccine? We are in the process of standing up here locally, mass injection sites, drive-through as well. So we're working that with the county and the fire, EMT, Benton County Fire Districts to expedite when we have the ability to get the vaccinations in the arms. In the conference call with the governor's office, they corrected us a little bit of what they saw as far as the report of only 180,000 in the arms. Once an injection is, the injections are given, data entry is done manually. So it's been apparently very slow. So that number's kind of skewed a little bit. Actually, Nick with the governor's office in Salvador made comment that there's actually less vaccines than what we had thought we had, and kind of more of a shortage. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Pro Tem Brink, who filled in for me a majority of that conference call or that Zoom meeting, but they made it a little bleaker that we didn't have enough in the state yet. So still crossed informations from both state and local regulators. So we'll hopefully get some more straight news this week. With that, also touch with you. I'm going to send you an email I got from the local Benton Franklin Health District from Jason in regards to what phase the governor is going to. He's going to phase 1B, tier 1. And I believe that's when Councilman Bloom said that he's now eligible for his shot, because he probably has read this. So I'll send that to you for information tomorrow. And then as follow-up in regards to in-person meetings, there is no in-person meetings allowed in this phase that we're in. And until then, until the governor changes that, we will not be having any conversation as to when that may occur. So we'll continue to work with our city managers and monitor things in regards to the in-person meeting and the different phases that we're in. So we're stuck for Zoomy for now, but it's all good.
Thank you for looking into that, Brent.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Not a problem. And I don't know what Mr. Bloom's got up there. I can't read it. It must be his, oh, you get a letter in the mail that says you can go now? Perfect.
Lucky.
Okay.
Agree.
So I think that's about all that I have this evening. We've got an executive session that we're going to adjourn into for potential litigation on RCW 423110I. And with that, there will be no action to follow, obviously, and then be about a 15-minute executive session. So with that, that's all that I have to add for this evening. And we'll ask our, Gail, is that an old hand up?
I just wanted to know, Brent, if you could clarify, or maybe you don't know, but I think the last couple of days they've been talking about that they don't have enough shots for the second doses that they're worried about. Do you know anything about that? And then I heard that Washington is actually going off private. They're going to go to some private agencies. I don't know. I didn't watch that news special thing they had yesterday with Starbucks.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you in regards to the second doses. And I would only assume that they would have sent out matching numbers first and second, but I don't have that answer for sure. I know that the state had a backlog in processing the provider enrollment. So that slowed down for the local or the providers to inject. That's when the conversation started to occur in regards to EMTs, dentists, anybody who has the ability to administer a vaccine under the proper supervision could do so. And that's the reason that we're working locally here with Pasco and Richland Fire, EMTs from all of those regions as well, Benton Fire District and their EMTs. So we're making every effort to make sure that we have enough people with needles. And so when the vaccines start rolling, we got a place to put them. Also, Nick and Salvador, I challenged them with, if we showed that we are stood up and ready to just administer, if there's any backlog of vaccines that are being held up in other areas that aren't getting into arms, and we can show that we can get them in arms, could we move to the front of the line? And he said he would do everything in his power to do so. So that's the reason we're making every effort to expedite the process of standing up an injection sites, just like they had to drive through testing. So more information to come. This is all new chapter in the book that we're writing here locally and regionally and state and worldwide. Councilman Bloom, one more time. Mute.
Okay, it's a website that the state has that you go through a questionnaire, and at the end of it, they tell you whether you're eligible or not. The only criteria now that opens up a lot of people is if you're over 65.
Right.
So anyone over 65 can now get in. But of course, there's no place to get it. But they do list 3 locations for getting your COVID shot. One is the Safeway in Kennewick, the Prosser Memorial, and another health facility in Kennewick. And I'm not quite sure I understand, but there's no information on how to sign up or get in. But you do submit your email and address, and they're supposed to contact you. So it's the COVID
Relief hotline. Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you, sir. All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and excuse our citizens this evening. Thank you for attending. Much appreciated. And then we'll move into that executive session for 15 minutes. Potential litigation is for RCW 423110I. And I see that everybody seems to be gone. Stephanie, is that correct?